You are listening to the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at pmpodcast.blogspot.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to show number 30. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 29th of April 2006. All four of the triple constraints are in the center of today's show. We will, however, not look at them in theory, just me telling you what they are. Instead, we will look at them and how you can apply them in order to manage your customers' expectations. And we'll have our usual project management news, resources, and events. But let me start out by sending a warm welcome back to all you regular listeners out there, but an especially warm welcome goes out to all our first-time listeners. I've done quite a bit of marketing over the past few weeks, and I have seen the listener numbers skyrocketing. So welcome! You are among friends here. I hope that you enjoy the show and that you will send me your feedback. It's, of course, a great segue because I want to thank all of you who have been sending me feedback for that. Many of you have left feedback on my blog. Lots of you write great emails, which I usually respond to right away. And some of you have even voted for or left a review for the Project Management Podcast on any of the various podcasting directories out there. It's appreciated. If you would like to participate in this as well, I would very much welcome it if you can go to the music store in iTunes and write a quick review. And if you haven't noticed, the Project Management Podcast is usually in the top 20 business podcasts of iTunes. Another way to say thank you is, of course, by checking out our sponsor. Today's show is sponsored by Project Insight, 100% web-based project management software. PMI research found that 52% of project teams are a mix of professional project managers and non-project managers. Project Insight bridges the gap with a solution that is robust enough for savvy project managers, yet easy enough for the entire team. To find out more, please visit www.projectinsight.com. While we're talking about iTunes and podcasting and project management, you will soon be able to find yet another regular project management-related podcast out there. I found this one by accident, and its producers are just in the process of starting it up, so there are no episodes available yet. You can read up on what they're doing at www.controllingchaos.com. I don't yet know who's behind Controlling Chaos, but I am glad to see that someone else is joining the club. Someone else who, like me, wants to produce a podcast that has a great sound quality. I really enjoyed reading that right there. Finally, where did I have my brain last week? The episode was about conflict resolution, but for some reason, I kept saying conflict management. If you haven't heard last week's episode yet, if you do, well then go ahead and whenever I say conflict management, replace it with conflict resolution in your head. Don't know where that came from. And now, helpful resources, project management news, and project management events. I have a quick list of 6 items for you. Let me start out with an article I found on the PM Forum, 24th of April, titled Project Management for Engineers Offered by Marcus Evans in Southeast Asia. Let me read this one sentence here to you. With a growing demand for project managers with an engineering background to manage the burgeoning list of oil and gas, mining and infrastructure projects in Southeast Asia, training specifically designed for engineers provides critically needed skills in that region of the world. And a company called Marcus Evans is putting on a 2-day seminar in 3 cities. And this seminar will address instituting project management, project planning, project budgetary controls, managing risk, human resource risk management, project monitoring, etc., etc., etc. If you are in engineering, you're a project manager, and you are in either Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, or Manila, this may be an event for you. If you're in the United States, the PMI has a hell of a lot of events happening in May. The link that you will find on the blog is to PMI's events calendar, and the one that I would like to focus on is happening on the 3rd of May, and it's happening in Hawaii, the PMI Honolulu Chapter's Professional Development Day, entitled Building Bridges for Project Success. Their keynote speaker is Major Mufi Hanuman, who will cover major Honolulu projects. Now, why am I focusing on this one? Well, Hawaii, Honolulu, sunshine, island. Hey, what else can you want as a project manager if you have to attend a seminar? This is absolutely perfect. If, however, you are not in sunny Hawaii, but you are in sunny South Africa, I've got something for you as well. The Project Management South Africa Conference 2006. This is a 3-day conference, and listen what they have just on day 1. They have both in the morning and both in the afternoons. They have seminars on 4 tracks, a total of 16 seminars or workshops during the first day only. And they're talking about the characteristics of a master project manager, fantastic title, enhancing project planning and cost management on infrastructure project. They'll be talking about project management, program management, and there's a workshop titled Multi-Project Management at Project-Based Companies. This sounds enormously interesting. So if you're in South Africa between the 30th of May and the 1st of June 2006, this is the place to be. In the past, I have often compared the PMI's body of knowledge and the APM's body of knowledge. The APM, the Association of Project Management, has now made available for free its 4th edition of the body of knowledge. Well, mind you, this is, so to speak, last year's model, because the 5th edition, is the current version. But the 4th edition is now free for download for everyone, and you'll find the link on the blog to that. So go ahead, read this. Interesting read. It's a high-level framework for every project manager out there. One of the blogs I follow is PM Think. Jerry Manis, the author of Napoleon on Project Management, whose book we gave away last week, and I believe 3 of his colleagues are maintaining this particular blog, and I found 2 entries that are very interesting for all us project managers who are looking for immediately applicable items. The first one is 10 Deadly Sins of Software Estimation. This is a PowerPoint presentation by Steve McConnell. It is from 2002, but it's still very, very applicable to today. And he talks about, well, the 10 deadly sins of software estimation. However, he starts out with sin number 20, and then he counts down from 20 to 1. He calls the first 10, 20 to 11, the almost deadly sins of software estimation. Number 20 is estimating how long it will take to build before anyone knows what it really is. And then let me find number 1 here. Here we go. Number 1, providing off-the-cuff estimates. He says, don't provide off-the-cuff estimates. Treat estimation as a mini project. And trust me, I'm guilty of this one. I have done off-the-cuff estimation for my customers, and it usually wasn't all that great. Second item I found on PM Think was a link to the CVR IT Consulting Template Library. Wow, quite a large library of templates. Incredible. Listen to this. They have templates and help for general information, project initiation, project planning, execution and control, project close, organization, PMOs, program management, evaluating consultants and vendors, and contracts. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, and as a PM it probably should, check this out, free to download, and you are actually allowed to use all of these templates without fee. Even commercial users are usually, they say, without fee, but please contact the author. This is a great library that CVR IT is providing to us all. And that was the news and helpful resources for this week. As always, if you want to read up on any of these resources, news or events, simply go to pmpodcast.blogspot.com, where you will find links to each and every one of the items that I have just mentioned here. And now our main topic of the day, applying the triple constraints in dealing with your customer. I got an email on the 20th of April from Peter J. Watkins. He wrote to me from Cheshire in England. I am really a UK-based software and electronic developer who manages projects. I usually end up with all the design work for large projects. And I just get frustrated with it all because when I give realistic timescales and cost, it gets reduced. This means I end up working for long hours at poor rates. This is a serious issue. Do you have any comments? And can you see a need for more practical web-based software that is not very expensive? Well, I took this opportunity and I sent him a very lengthy reply. And I have used this lengthy reply as the basis for today's discussion on the triple constraints, because what Peter has described here looks like a classic example of consultant meets triple constraints. And I have been in his shoes, and here is how I have tackled this particular issue. First of all, if you're not a consultant and you're going to tune out now, don't. Because this is something that is going to be valuable to you even if you are a project manager, a full-time employed project manager in a company. You're going to have a customer, and this customer is going to have to be managed by you. And a very good way to do this is by using and explaining the triple constraints to this customer. Well, where do you start? Well, you start at the beginning. You start with whatever you call it, an offer, an estimate, a proposal, a project initiation report. And in that particular proposal, you are going to have to put down your assumptions. Because your assumptions will allow you to manage the expectations and the understanding that your customer has of the project much better. And of course, if they're written down, even more so. What I do is I write assumptions like, we assume that we will developing the design and code for you. That's an easy one. Then we assume that you, dear customer, will be delivering, and then I will put down a list of all the items that I expect the customer to deliver and in what quality I expect the customer to deliver these. I write, we assume that you expect us to test the deliverables that we give you in the end so that the code is fully tested. We assume that you expect the quality of our work to be similar to a reference project. We assume that in order to be ready for the deadline of end of June, there will be no requirement changes after the middle of May, etc., etc., etc. So this is my disclaimer section, and I usually put a lot of stuff in here so that the customer sees what I have based my estimates on. And this is also the first step in showing and explaining to them, if you make a change to any of these assumptions, the house of cards that I have built is in trouble here. Next, you want to make sure that the customer understands the concept of the triple constraints in projects. The triple constraints are cost, scope, schedule, and quality. Yes, I know that these are 4 that I've just listed, and not 3 as the name would insinuate, but don't blame me for that. The powers that be, the internet and all the documentation, they just simply disagree on which of these 4 are actually constituting the triple constraints. But don't get too hung up on what the triple constraints actually are. Your project may have completely different constraints. You may be okay with cost, scope, schedule, and quality, but your triple constraints may be different. It may be resources, it may be a supplier that you have to use, you name it. So your triple constraints can be completely different, and we're still talking about triple constraints. So what you want to do is, you want to find a good explanation of what the triple constraints are. Go to Google, go to Wikipedia, or I'm planning to do a little overview of the triple constraints more on a theoretical basis in a future show. Use that information, use that text in your proposal to explain to the customer that a change on one of these constraints inevitably will lead to a change in the other one. Everybody understands that if you put less gas in your tank of your car, you can go less far. Or, to stick with the triple constraints, if you have a 3-legged table and you start chopping off one leg, the table will stand a little bit crooked. It's as simple as that. Yeah, of course, then next you also have to put reserves into your estimates. You know that the customer will ask for more when it comes to the scope. You also know that the project will most likely take longer than what you expect. And you also know that the customer will want to cut the price. Be ready for this. Add a reserve into your estimates. Now, is this ethical? Yes, it is. Because you're not adding a reserve for your own enrichment. You're not adding a reserve to cheat. You're adding this reserve to allow for normal project risk and normal project delays. So there is no ethical issue right here. Okay, so you've laid the groundwork. You've put the assumptions in writing. You've put the triple constraints in writing. And you've added your reserve. The next thing, what's going to happen is you're going to have to be ready to show the effect of cost cuts and schedule cuts. Every customer is going to want to save time or money. Preferably they want to save both. But since you have laid the groundwork with these assumptions and explanations of triple constraints, your customer should now be more understanding of the effects that his or her changes will have. What you will need to be aware of, however, before you send your proposal to the customer, is how these changes are going to affect your work. Well, what if the customer wants more of this, less of that? What if he wants it cheaper, faster, better? How will I answer these questions? You have to be ready for this. You have to know what to say. Well, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? 2 things. You have to have alternatives ready, and you have to be willing to negotiate and able to negotiate. Let's start with the alternatives. Once you meet the customer, you have to have the alternatives kind of ready in your head already. If they want it faster, if they say we need to have this sooner, well, offer a phased approach, because you know you can't squeeze all these requirements into a faster time frame, but we can roll this out in phases. We start by building the basics now in phase 1, and we add the fluffy stuff later on. Ask them which features can be removed. This will not only make it faster, this will also make it cheaper. And if they ask for even more reductions in cost, you can also move the features into the next budget phase. Doesn't make it cheaper, but it enables the customer to play with her budget. It's almost the same as if you're putting it out in a phased approach, but with a clear focus on the customer needs to have the cost distributed over time. Then, of course, there's always the option that you can actually let the customer do some of the work. This is usually a bad idea, because in the end, you're going to have to be faced with having to integrate the customer work into your work. And usually there is, just the issues of integrating this is usually quite a bit of work. It may be a good idea for you to go down this road if you know that the customer delivers quality work. So these are the kind of alternatives that you have to think through, and you have to particularly focus on your project and be ready to give alternatives that work in your project. Then there is negotiate. Yeah, it's similar to having alternatives ready, but when you negotiate, you may wish to keep the triple constraints in mind. If it's the cost that's in question, cost can only be decreased by changing the other variables in this equation. You can't just cut $100,000 or pounds or euros out of your project. It doesn't work. You have to decrease something. You have to decrease the scope. You can select lower grade components. That's of course rather difficult in software development. Or you can have some work done by somebody who has a lower hourly rate. Maybe not the specialist, but a junior. The schedule, if the schedule needs to be negotiated. In my experience, customers have arbitrary deadlines. Maybe a trade show. Maybe a major stakeholder is going on vacation and wants to see the solution beforehand. This usually makes the deadline not negotiable. But again, you can ask them, if you want it on that date, can we agree to deliver the most important features on that date and then deliver other features later? So far, for me at least, this has always worked. Customers, of course, always wish to increase the scope, so you're going to have to negotiate around the scope. You have to make clear that they understand what a scope increase means. It means that it will probably cost more. It will probably take longer. And I have yet to find a customer who wishes to actually decrease the scope here. Make it clear to them that the number one way to impact the cost is to decrease the scope or leave it the way it is at the moment. Well, then there is quality. If you have to negotiate the quality, well, if it's acceptable, I mentioned this before, assign a junior person to this task. Manufacturing, use lower grade. Or you can also agree quality to do less in-house testing. In my experience, software testing takes about 25% of development. So if you can deliver the software to the customer, they take care of the testing and then give the test results back to you, they have saved a lot of money that they don't have to pay you. Yes, and this is what you can do in order to be ready to show the effects that cost cuts, schedule cuts, quality costs, increases in scope, etc. will have on your project. Have alternatives ready and negotiate with the customer. In the end, you may have to say no. This is very hard to do, especially for those project managers who work in-house. If you cannot come to an agreement with the customer, you have to be able to say no. I cannot build this for you in the cost, quality and scope you're asking for. It's probably risky for a consultant to do that, but it is also a very small world. If you deliver a product that is not up to the customer's expectations and to the quality standards, you can bet that other customers of yours will hear about this and your reputation in the future will suffer. Yeah, and that was my long response to Peter Watkins, telling him how he can use the triple constraints in order to manage the customer expectations. Today's Project Management Podcast's tip of the week is stop and open your project management methodology books. Now, this tip is mostly for those PMs among you who don't work in a large corporation that have a tailored company internal project management methodology. It's mostly for you PMs out there who are either the only project manager in the company or just one of a few. You're probably faced with tons and tons of projects and very little time to do them. Now, here's how I dealt with this situation at the onset of a project. So, next time you are given a new project, stop. Don't do anything. Don't open up the project plan of a similar project you had last year and try to adapt it to what you gotta do right now. Instead, take a moment, take a breather, and open up a few of your project management books. Go back to the basics. In your situation, you are so often faced with all that pressure, and you have to run from one project to the next, that you're probably forgetting your basic training. Go back and look at what the theory says you should do. Pretend that you are a beginner in project management and that you've never done a project before. Relearn how to start a project. Relearn the importance of a kickoff meeting. And relearn that the first thing you do in a project is to set goals. Now, even though I work in a large corporation and we do have an internal methodology, I still practice this trick. I go back to the most basic presentation that we have on our methodology here, and I go through it again, I read it again. Because by doing this, I take the new project that I have just been given and I begin to fit this project into our processes, into our methodology. And you will do the same when you read your project management books. Because like this, I can very quickly assess which parts of the methodology I am going to need and which parts I can just forget about. This is a very powerful trick that will help you not to jump ahead of yourself. There you have it, this week's Project Management Podcast's tip of the week. Stop and open your project management methodology books. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As a reminder, we have a page on iTunes that is inviting you to write a short review about the show. Thank you. Next week, we have an interview planned with Frank Parth, who is the chair of the PMI Consulting SIG. As always, you can find us on the web at pmpodcast.blogspot.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. Good project management is not so much knowing what to do and when, as knowing what excuses to give and when. With that, take a day off next week. You're the project manager. You deserve a day off. Until next time.